There we go.
Okay, wait, we were getting there. All right, this Affliction Warlock.
Yes, that was the commentator's honest reaction to seeing an Affliction Warlock. Hey everyone, my name is Bowser. Welcome to the MDI Day 2 first match of Cheese vs Thunderstruck. This is one of my favorite runs of all weekend. I wanted to do a video on this one and break down some of it if I could. A lot of this is routing. There isn't anything crazy going on with the healers here. So I'm not really on my healer duty here. But Cheese ends up running a very non-traditional composition. Now, when you can run a Shadow Priest or Discipline Priest for PI, that allows you to do power infusion pulls. You get to have your massive AoE, uncapped AoE players truly just pop off. And we love that. We want those players to pop off. We want them to do incredible damage. But also one of the nicest parts about being able to bring a Shadow Priest is the extra utility, which certainly helps. Now, you do get that on the side of Thunderstruck with the Druid, because you get that wonderful healing through Nature's Vigil, very similar to Vampiric Embrace. So the biggest difference in these compositions is, yes, they have mass AoE characters, they have some utility and high AoE damage and funnel. So what's different here? Well, normally you run a rogue, right? Because the rogue's gonna allow you to both shroud skip a few things, which is very important, and also they're going to be able to use tricks. Do y'all know that one wind sentry on the way to Croth onto the Lishlash arena? The whole point of that pull is it's slow and it's boring. There's one sentry you have to kill, and then the jump pads activate. So if you can use tricks or misdirect or something to get mobs from one area to snap over to the sentry, it ends up going a lot quicker. And not only that, again, funnel damage and all that good stuff. It should allow the packs to die pretty evenly, which is just great for the timer, great for percentage, and great for everyone involved. If you don't know what a snap is, by the way, a snap is when, so you might have noticed in Mythic Plus, mobs aren't allowed to de-aggro outside of very specific situations. Some of those specific situations being if you can leave combat. So let's say a rogue, right, pisses off a bunch of mobs and then puts tricks on the tank to go, hey, look, the tank's the one who did it, not me. All the aggro goes onto the tank. If the mobs can't walk to the tank, they'll sit around for a second, and then the game goes, okay, you know what? They're not coming. We're going to just move them to the target with aggro. So then they snap and teleport to the player with aggro on them still. This can happen accidentally if you've ever played the game and somebody grabbed a mob and you're just all of a sudden like 4 things appear on you randomly. Yeah, it's pretty terrifying if you've never seen it. But snaps can be used pretty strategically as well. But one thing that they do here on the side of Cheese, you might have just saw from Zatsy, is Zatsy goes and pulls even more mobs into the boss fight. And I'm pretty sure Thunderstruck does as well. This helps you just clear out the trash before the bridge, which is pretty important. But they use this with their Lust timer. So Cheese ends up going for like a lower health kind of execute Lust. And as long as your Lust is back up for the last pull with Doragosa or wherever you choose to use it, you know, then it's kind of fine if you want to flex a late Lust here. But it's a very clean kill, and they even out the percentages with that Lust and execute phase pretty seriously. If you were watching the two of these head to head, you might have thought Thunderstruck had a clear victory, but no, Cheese actually takes out the boss a second earlier. And of course, there's a 5-second differential from a death on the side of Thunderstruck. So they move forward. Now, this is why you bring a rogue. You can shroud this. They already used Invis Pot to skip the first bridge. That's not going to be up yet. In fact, it's not going to be up for another 1:06 seconds or worse. I think it's like 1:10 because they used it just at the start. So what they do here is, I think it's called Sigil of Fear. Demon Hunter drops the Sigil of Fear, which you can kind of see on the ground right here. I'll try to zoom in on that for you. And that's going to fear all the mobs. One of them is asleep. And then they just walk by. And then the Demon Hunter uses Shadow Meld to escape combat. That's one of the only ways to leave combat in Mythic Plus and drop aggro. This allows them to walk on through and get a rather big pull down here. And this is the normal stuff. Now, this is usually when Shroud is used, but to not have to use Shroud again means you've now made it through all the major skips of the dungeon that require a rogue. So how are we going to deal with the snap? Because the sentry's coming up. And please excuse me tabbing forward. Let me go find the segment for you all. You can't really see it here, but the Demon Hunter sets up to the left right now. And everyone jumps over nice and fine. The Demon Hunter sets up what I believe is called Sigil of Flame, which will blow up and make all the mobs angry. But every sigil takes 2 seconds to arm. You just saw it on the clip earlier where they dropped a Fear Sigil underneath a bunch of mobs. So in that 2-second period, you can hit the jump pad before it disables, because it always disables during combat, and fly back over. Now, this doesn't mean the tank has aggro, it means that the Demon Hunter has aggro. But as long as they have a defensive or something, they should be able to survive the first couple hits or maybe get out of the way in time. And then the tank can pick them back up and congratulations, you have your sentry pull. I'm not sure if it was as clean or as perfect as Thunderstruck's. And honestly, it was really impressive to see, again, another way to do this without a rogue, without a hunter. There's very few ways to make this kind of thing happen. So absolutely impressive stuff from Cheese. By the way, if you're curious how this works, a lot of teams, and you can see it happening right now on Cheese's side, will knock all of the mobs and then fear them or mass root them, because you need to kill this Alpha Eagle separately from the other mobs, or at least get them low enough so that it's not a problem if you bring in the small mobs, because they bolster. This key is a bolstering, and yeah, bolstering is just, it's the biggest time waster in the world if you don't kill the mobs kind of even. So you'll notice that Cheese grabs them in, and every team is doing this, by the way. It's just, it doesn't mind if you bolster the last 2% of a mob, because it's still going to die in a few moments. It matters when, like, the mob has 50% health and they're 4 times the size with like 4 times the health. It's just not the vibe. So it's important to note that Thunderstruck starts Croth first, and I mean by a decent margin right now. If I have the full thing on screen right now, or if I don't, it's 86% to 100% on Cheese. So they just start the fight, which means they're down a couple of seconds in the boss fight. But I think it's their optimization of damage here that does something special. Now, I would have to run the numbers, so, you know, comment section go off for me. I think they all pop their buttons here, do as much damage as they can to Croth, but when phase comes up, right, when they get the goal phase up, instead of going red phase first, which is how every pug does it and every MDI team I've seen that does it so far, they go blue phase first, which, yeah, you get a moat that drops a haste buff and like stops you from getting shoved around the arena. It's good, don't get me wrong, but blue buff? Really? We're not going red phase first? But it turns out they must have just known that their cooldowns would be back up, or had an awareness that like the lineup for their composition was better, because it is 53% to 27% right now. It almost looks like Cheese could never catch up, right? Like, oh, they're going to be down about half a pull. They better have something special going on, or the Affliction Warlock has to just do insane amounts of damage in the massive AoE pull coming up. But they end up doing a red phase, and you gotta watch this to believe this. Third goal goes in, red phase starts, and watch this health bar just disappear. All the 3 minutes show up, everyone starts popping their single, or their 2 minutes or whatever they are, right? They start popping all their buttons. They are now even with Thunderstruck. They take the lead against Thunderstruck. Thundering goes off, which gives them another damage buff as red phase ends, and it turns into an almost identical kill time once again. This is, I mean, this is wonderful. They're starting the fight a little bit later, and I'm not sure if that's just the damage profile of Affliction Warlock holding them back or what. And I would assume it might be that Affliction's not able to do its really big damage in some of those smaller bird pulls. It probably did good damage, but you know, not the kind of damage you'd expect from like Feral Druid and Unholy DK. But then a bit of a disaster happens here, and Thunderstruck does this much cleaner. So this is like the Affliction pull, right? Like this is like Fire Mage Affliction territory, where you have massive AoE, you pull everything together that you possibly can. And this should be the moment to shine. You're gonna watch the Affliction Warlock's health, or damage, excuse me, just spike here. Incredible stuff. And it's only going to get bigger. As they all stack up and they get closer, they actually hit the 500k mark pretty quickly, and this should be it, but you might have noticed the tank died. And I'm not really sure what happened to the tank here, but they explode. And then it's Fire Feet, you know, the Warlock's running for their life, and now they're still doing damage because they're an Affliction Warlock, right? Like, they still have dots ticking and everything, so like, that's good. Yeah, that's kind of the part they need. But they're not able to ramp up the rest of the damage with the Seeds of Corruption spam. Well, not for a little bit anyway. And so this ends up really slowing down the pull, and this is going to allow Thunderstruck to have a lead. Also, the bigger problem here is Affliction Warlock, I believe, detonates mobs when they die. So as mobs die, they start doing a ton of damage to each other, which is great, and you're going to see their damage meter spike for it. But it's bolstering, and it's no longer as even as it was because of the tank death. So now you're seeing this kind of miserable, huge lash. Look at that monstrosity. I would, oh man, I don't know what would happen to me if I saw one of those walking down the street at me. It's just terrifying. And so it's going to take a lot longer to go through these last couple percents. And unfortunately, this gives Thunderstruck the lead, but you might have noticed, where's the healer? And this is the next really cool thing. There is a way to path up high enough to grab these Astral Knights, these algeth'ar defenders or whatever they're called, and you can just bring them down here, because one of the slowest parts of this dungeon is coming up. You have to do a pull, and then you have to do one more pull, and you drag that one into the boss, because Doragos is a bit of a pushover, if I'm being honest with you. So why not just combine a pull with the boss, and then you only have one trash pack? But what if you could just walk to the boss? So Cheese gets to walk to the boss if they do this correctly. They're gonna have to deal with Astral Whirlwinds, they're gonna have to deal with more AoE and missiles coming through, but as long as it can heal through it, this shouldn't be a problem. And Fortified, yeah, these mobs hit harder, but they're CCable and very manageable. And because the boss isn't gonna be hitting that much harder, because again, we're in a Fortified week, this works out beautifully. And while they do end up leaving this boss fight a little bit slower, again, the damage is unreal. I did not actually time the two boss fights to see which was quicker. I might have that actually posted on screen right now. I'll time it afterwards. But this is such a great idea. As long as everyone targets the correct mob here, they target the tank, and they target, or not the tank, they target the boss and the branch when it comes out. This is everything you could ever ask for. So wonderful stuff, great time management, and I'll end up having both teams on screen here so you can just see how much visible time save you get from doing a pull like this. Thunderstruck is just now starting this big pull of all the Echo Knights, and they just gotta slap the last HP. There we go. Cheese now gets to walk it in. Now, they do have a roaming pack in their way here. I wonder what timing could have prevented this, or maybe doing everything perfect. Maybe the roaming pack wouldn't be here, but the priest hits a Mind Soothe so that they don't see as far, drop a Soul Stone on someone, and then once they're ready to pull, they're gonna grab all this trash, which again is kind of standard in this format. You see a lot of teams doing this. They get a nice LOS set up here on the corner. And then once everything is gathered, they pull the boss, and watch the damage meters just go flying up. And I mean, I think I did the math once at one point, but like the amount more damage that Cheese does on this boss fight is incredible. They lust the opener, they get everyone just pouring damage to the boss. And the Demon Hunter, who was just doing phenomenal damage earlier, ends up being the lowest damage here, but they end up doing around the peak of Thunderstruck's damage, while the Shadow Priest and the Warlock get to thrive here. Again, not having to bring the Rogue allowed them to bring such a different style of composition, style of damage, that they just destroy Doragosa. I mean, what would you do to get a 22 timed with the boss's health bar dying this fast, right? It's just incredible stuff. And even when getting pulled and whatnot, they're so quick to get out of it. And everything about this was clean, right? Other than the one mistake on the big algeth'ar classic pull, it's been really good stuff from Cheese. They have their groups lined up perfectly. They have their strategies executed pretty quickly. And the way they stack up the damage was something I haven't really seen a whole lot of in Group C. In fact, I haven't seen it a lot outside of the top teams. And I do want to see more of that, because when I compare some of the lower seeded teams that are clearly there for their first time, which is awesome, by the way, don't get me maybe that'll be me one day, right? But like, they need to employ strategies that other teams are employing, like stacking up your cooldowns the right way, making sure damage phases line up, making sure you're not walking back a million miles after killing a mob or killing a boss. And it's those little things add up, but once they start adding up and you start adding these little tricks and these little pieces of tech, you end up getting times like this. An 1824 algeth'ar is impressive on a 22 fortified. That's an awesome key level to be going that fast on, but they did so with an Affliction Warlock, and they even messed up probably the best Affliction part of the dungeon. So great stuff to cheese. This was an absolute treat to watch, and I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did. There's lots more MDI to come. We have the Last Stand coming this weekend. That's the last chance qualifier tournament, if you will. And then we have the global finals at the end of the month. So I'm going to cover as much of it as I can. And hey, get subscribed if you want to see some more of this. If you guys really like this MDI content, I love making it. I'll keep covering matches and talking about what makes them cool, because I think this is some of the sickest stuff in gaming. But you all let me know. Thank you so much for watching, and I will talk to you all soon.